Thank you, Director, for being here. And I think my colleague previously for concerns about people who've served their sentences and done the time for their crime. It wasn't the question I was planning to lead with, but it's a good segue to something I sent a letter to you on in April, and I appreciate your response. Your response really dealt with the accuracy, and I think everyone wants them to be accurate. We don't want someone to be falsely denied residence. We also don't want someone to come in who maybe should have been screened out. So we want accuracy, but I mean, fundamentally, do you believe that tenant screenings are valuable to landlords?
I think when they're fully accurate, it has a very different benefit. You know, there are ways in which people can get information about a tenant, but I will tell you, the Fair Credit Reporting Act has accuracy standards, and I want the tenant screening industry to follow them carefully.
Yeah, I agree they should be accurate, but sometimes the quest for accuracy is really just using the law to prevent people from doing screenings in the first place. And look, we had a great second chance program in the businesses that I owned prior to coming to Congress. I'm passionate about, kind of the second chance program. Once you've served your sentence, you need to be fully integrated into society. Otherwise, they got the sentencing wrong. And so, it is a valuable thing. And the whole point of it, it started with trust. Somebody was honest about their background. Yeah. We checked it. It matched. Now we've built trust. And I think it could be important. Turning to things that we probably are more aligned on, I was pleased even in your opening remarks that you talked about data brokers. And, when you look at common concerns that we've had that have been bipartisan about privacy, American citizens have had their data stolen, hacked, sold, and otherwise exploited. So I was encouraged on March 15th that the CFPB announced a request for public input regarding how data brokers collect and sell personal consumer information. Last week I saw that you even extended the comment period to July 15th. Could you give us an overview of what you're seeing so far regarding data broker industry and how they collect and use personal consumer data?
So in the 1960s, this committee, I believe, at a different name, was concerned, and other committees, about all of these firms creating dossiers about us. And the Fair Credit Reporting Act sometimes focuses a lot on those who are the three big credit bureaus. But there's more and more companies now that are assembling this information and especially collecting it digitally. They're selling it, and it's being used for all sorts of purposes, including employment insurance and so much more. We're trying to make sure we know what is the new business models that we're using. We do know that there's a lot more of them, and many of them may be doing things that are covered by the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So I hope this committee really thinks about privacy, data brokers all together, because what we did, I think, 50 years ago was important, but it has to be modernized for the age of being.
Absolutely. I think there's a definite urgent need for legislation. I think the Fourth Amendment protection of privacy is probably the most abused current portion of the Bill of Rights. Not that there aren't other portions that are under stress. But you recently noted in remarks at Money 2020 last year that the Bureau will be, quote, exploring safeguards to prevent excessive control or monopolization by a handful of firms. Over the last several years, a consortium of the largest financial institutions in the U.S. has sought to exert governance over data ecosystem and sometimes serving as mandated intermediaries between peer-to-peer consumer transactions, thus decreasing competition and consumer choice in the marketplace. How do you assess this situation as you address the Bureau's goal of providing consumer choice and, frankly, the ability for people to protect their privacy, the privacy of their own financial data?
So what you should expect about how we implement this statute, and I've shared with some of you, we want to propose that there's going to be some restrictions on secondary uses. So if you're moving your data to someone, they should only be using it for the purposes that are permitted. We've got to figure out how to enforce this properly. We also want to think about how to make sure that an intermediary doesn't take the data, send the data, but then use it themselves. So it's not going to be totally easy, but I think we have a framework that will get support, and I expect we'll propose it for comment in October. But the data protection element of this is huge.
Yeah, thank you. And the enforcement mechanism is really the challenge. We've got our own bill, the It's Your Data Act, that recognized as a property right in your individual data. So look forward to continuing to work